is force-fed to nobody. It's there, take it or leave it.
Musically speaking, Danny was inspired by the likes of Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson and Venom's Kronos to think seriously about becoming a heavy metal vocalist. However, his first band were more punk than anything resembling hard rock. They were called the Lemon Grove Kids, after a film by cult movie director Russ Meyer. Leaving school with 2 A-levels, English and Art, Danny had intended to pursue a course in journalism, but fate decreed that another road lay ahead for the wayward adolescent. Though Danny had a dream of being in a rock band, his head was also anchored to the real world of work. That's why he got the qualifications he needed to attend a further education course. When he eventually started up Cradle of Filth, a name he created by chance whilst doodling one day on his school exercise book, he never lost sight of the fact that the chances of making it big were going to be very slim. So it came to pass that the British black metal band was formed in the summer of 1991. The brainchild of our 18-year-old goth and horror fan, it originally comprised himself on vocals under his new moniker Danny Filth, guitarist Paul Ryan, bassist John Richard and drummer Darren White. Right from their inception, it was quite obvious that there was something uniquely different about their approach to the darker side of metal. Before the release of their critically acclaimed debut album in 1994, Cradle of Filth released many home demos, which are now very scarce and are prized collector's items for any self-respecting Filth fan. In 1993, a year after recording their first demo dubbed Invoking the Unclean, the group recruited guitarist Robin Graves. Graves' initial tenure didn't last long, since he temporarily quit the ranks after recording a second demo with the group, Orgiastic Pleasures. However, when bassist John Richard exited the band a short time later to go to university and then form his own Cradle of Filth clone band, Hecate Enthroned, Graves stepped back into the formative lineup to assume bass duties. This opened the door for 2 brand new recruits, guitarist Paul Allender and keyboardist Ben Ryan. In December of 1993, Cradle of Filth took the UK metal world by storm when they unleashed their third demo, the cult and often bootlegged Total Fucking Darkness. Danny later described this piece of work as the only important demo the band ever recorded. The PR machine was on a roll as Cradle of Filth hunted for that elusive record deal. Describing themselves as supreme vampiric evil, they even kept a straight face while citing the influences of past literary rock icons such as Lord Byron, supernatural 19th century author Le Fanu, the philosopher Nietzsche, and Bram Dracula Stoker. The game was afoot. All of these demos were a lead-up to what many would consider the greatest ever black metal album release. These formative tapes showed a band gradually coming to grips with their now trademark gothic imagery and the vampire myth. Cradle of Filth aspired to writing full-blown operatic pieces drenched in blood and darkness, a goal they would achieve a little way down the line. The group, now with new drummer Nicholas Barker in the lineup, had obviously done their homework. Their endeavours resulted in them getting signed to the Cacophonous record label at the tail end of 1993.
Usually in my spare time I think about assassinating religious figures such as the Pope and, should she still be alive, Mother Teresa.
Almost overnight, this outlandish bunch of metallic rogues quickly became the most popular UK representatives of the satanic black metal revival of the early 1990s. Not only was their music a cut above the rest, but Cradle of Filth were also renowned for their extravagant live performances. Then keyboard player Ben Ryan played much of the band's then live set, wearing a giant papier-mâché goat's head. Don't think for a minute that this was black metal's version of Spinal Tap. That tag was far removed from any sort of truth. With the release of their formidable debut album, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, in April 1994, the Filth solidified their already growing status as masters of their dark art. No exception to the rule, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh was one of the most pure and brilliantly crafted metallic masterpieces released to date. The record had just about everything one could want from a debut. Its totally unique melding and harmony of instruments was something that really had to be heard to be believed. And to add the icing on the cake, the mixing in The Principle of Evil Made Flesh helped bring to life and intertwine each of these individual parts in a grandiose manner. 3 tracks on the album were keyboard-based instrumentals, which helped to break up the intensity of proceedings, enabling the band to set the right atmosphere for upcoming tracks. The songs on offer had great variation in their pace and style, yet remained so fluent in what was essentially an epic tale of dark evil and repressed gothic lust. The album's title track in particular, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, was a very speedy and more straightforward affair than the rest of what was on offer within the record's hidden grooves. It provided a cutting-edge opener, synthesized effects providing a perfect foil to backbiting, pulsating rhythms. Elsewhere, The Forest Whispers My Name was destined to be a true classic, as too with the likes of The Black Goddess Rises and To Eve the Art of Witchcraft. The Principle of Evil Made Flesh was an amazingly successful debut album. It went on to sell 30 to 32,000 copies. Yet despite this sales success, there followed some serious disputes between Cradle of Filth and their original label Cacophonous Records over such things as money and an apparent lack of promotion. Cradle of Filth were now achieving their creative and contractual goals, but felt hindered by the small size of their record label. This provided a constant source of strain on the band, and lineup changes ensued. Paul and Benjamin Ryan failed to get on with the band on a personal level and were forced to leave, along with second guitarist Paul Allender. The Ryan brothers went on to form The Blood Divine, together with original Filth skinsman Darren White. They put out 2 competent albums, but sadly eventually split up. Suitable replacements came from out of the blue in the form of Stuart Anstis on guitar, Irish keyboard player Damien Gregori, and Jared Demeter temporarily on second guitar.
We went out and got absolutely wankered last night. Yeah, we got cunt-tossed. Cunt-tossed.
It was indeed a tumultuous phase in the development of Cradle of Filth, what with the loss of various group members and the numerous problems that they had with their record company. A drastic course of action was needed to remedy the situation. In order to free themselves from the label's clutches, the band decided to record and release a mini-album entitled Vampire – Dark Fairy Tales in Palestine, an extra-long EP of 36 minutes. It largely comprised material that had been originally intended for the group's upcoming second, full-length studio album, although at the back of their minds, some material was considered far too good for this obligatory release. Cradle of Filth were determined to save the best songs they had written together for their next long-playing opus. The new record was released on Cacophonous in 1996 to finalise the severing of the band's relationship with the label, a compromise solution to allow them to escape their contract and release a third studio album for a brand new record company. The release of Vampire was received with mixed feelings by fans and critics alike. By some it was hailed as far superior to their first album, and by some thrown in a corner because its musical direction was too unclear, leading to songs stuffed with ideas but lacking somewhat in overall songwriting concept. But then the Cradle of Filth sound was still evolving. What the EP did provide, though, was a transition stage for the band. The new Cradle of Filth record was far more aggressive and production-wise less clean in nature than that of the band's debut effort. It was less evocative and more destructive, more vampiresque in some ways, as on the revisited version of the Filth classic, The Forest Whispers My Name, and the atmospherically woven orchestral piece, She Mourns a Lengthening Shadow. With European sales of the band's 1994 debut album, The Principle of Evil Made Flesh, and their 1996 EP, Vampire, Dark Fairy Tales in Palestine, already exceeding over 100,000 units, Cradle of Filth were also, without a doubt, the biggest act of their kind the United States had seen since black metalers Venom. By now, both records were considered underground classics by Filth devotees across the globe. As the band's legion of fans continued to expand, so too did Cradle of Filth's hold on their ever-darkened throne. Record company interest was paramount. Cradle of Filth eventually signed up with veteran British metal label Music for Nations in 1996. The results of their new business liaisons would soon prove very fruitful, since Music for Nations had extremely strong US ties through their affiliation with the Mayhem label. Now with a permanent member, Gian Perez, joining Stuart Anstis on guitar, the band decided the time was right to reveal the exclusive material they had deemed far too good for their previous record label, Cacophonous.
The song came out of, it was like, right, come on, we've got a song, we're doing a single. Get a song together, and it just got patched in from various riffs that people liked.
Now signed to Music for Nations, Cradle of Filth responded to their critics by recording the material they'd hidden away during the Cacophonous conflict. Eagerly anticipated, the release of Dusk and Her Embrace was to become an extremely interesting new adventure for the British black metal men. The resulting album of material the band had deemed too good for Cacophonous was released on Monday, 18th of November 1996. In preparation, the band spent time revising a lot of the old lineup's material for Dusk and Her Embrace, and also writing 2 entirely new songs. Needless to say, Dusk aired the band's frustration with their previous label situation in an aggressive melting pot of metallic mayhem. Refreshed and completely revitalised, the album's compelling soundscape was provided by the band's strongest member lineup to date, adding guitarists Gian Perez and Stuart Anstis, and keyboardist Damien Gregori to the band's core of bassist Robin Graves, drummer Nicholas Barker, and immortal dark screamer Danny Filth. Featuring some graphically awe-inspiring cover artwork courtesy of famed ghost hunter and photographer Simon Marsden, whose ideology fitted in perfectly with the band's gothic ethos, Dusk and Her Embrace explored at some length Cradle of Filth's morbid fascination with vampire mythology and Victorian and medieval romanticism. Acting more like the soundtrack to the most twisted Peter Cushing horror movie in existence, the cold sweat that the band evoked quickly heated into a maddening torment as they welcomed the listener to the most lavish of nightmares. Unlike most contemporary black metal albums of the time, those that suffered greatly from less than fabulous production, Dusk and Her Embrace was something of an over-the-top, sonically laden gem and stood head and shoulders above the rest. Taking over 2 months to record, it offered a challenge to a scene whose habits were by now becoming far too often uninspiring. But then Cradle of Filth wanted this album to transcend the way a normal album would sound. They were after something almost inhuman, almost like an epic film score. The sort of thing you could listen to whilst watching a Dracula movie with the sound down, or watching something totally cataclysmic like War of the Worlds. As an issue of metal magazine Terrorizer reported, Cradle of Filth have managed to up the ante without sacrificing the essence, namely the music. Produced by renowned mixing man Kit Wolvin, whose illustrious credits include Cathedral and Irish hard rock legends Thin Lizzy, Dusk and Her Embrace captured every bit of Cradle of Filth's darkened musical dexterity. Even further, it contained some of the most ornate metallic creations one could hear this side of Hades. On Dusk, the band sounded much more coherent than on their previous EP, Vampire, Dark Fairy Tales in Palestine, resulting in a bunch of small, medium-length masterpieces bursting with bombastic ideas, but also knitted closely together in perfect harmony. Going straight for the jugular, Dusk and Her Embrace was a full-blown gothic epic of blood-curdling proportions. The music on offer was a fully realised thrash opera, topped off with Danny Filth's trademark eardrum-popping screech, the singing equivalent to steel talons being dragged across the blackest of blackboards. The band were also becoming more adventurous with their song titles. A gothic romance, Red Roses for the Devil's Whore, Beauty Slept in Sodom, Humana Inspired to Nightmare, and Malice Through the Looking Glass being just a few of the witty gems on offer. And, to top it all off, the recognisable Cradle of Filth sound shone darkly throughout every single song. Across the Atlantic, Dusk and Her Embrace became the first recording from the band to officially hit American record stores. In a very short period of time, it had sold more copies than all of Cradle of Filth's previous releases put together. Overnight, Cradle of Filth went from being the proverbial jokers of the goth metal pack to the undisputed leaders of it. In response to this popular global demand for Filth product, Dusk and Her Embrace subsequently appeared in 2 special limited edition formats: a digipack bound like a book, featuring a cover made of fake leather with the Cradle of Filth logo in silver on it, and a highly collectible coffin box format. Both contained bonus album tracks. The digipack featured Nocturnal Supremacy 96, and the coffin box an extra instrumental and a Slayer cover. However, despite the apparent realisation of their commercial aims, further lineup changes ensued as keyboardist Damien Grigori soon departed, to be replaced by Les Lecter Smith.